誰にも知られてない中で8ヶ月間こうアパートの中でね一人で作っていて、で自分はやっぱりここにいてこういう作品を作ってるんだっていうことを誰かに知ってほしかったっていう気持ちがあったのかな。でこれさえ作れば誰かに何かが届くんじゃないかって思っていて。
If you are watching this video, odds are you've heard of Makoto Shinkai before, but if not, I'll quickly bring you up to speed. Makoto Shinkai is a Japanese director, screenwriter and storyboarder who has been at the forefront of Japanese cinema for the past few years. In 2016, he directed and produced the record-breaking film Kimi no Na wa, or Your Name, which became the highest-grossing Japanese film of all time. He has of course worked on several other projects, the most recent being Weathering With You, which arrived in the US a couple of months ago. Throughout his career, Shinkai has been called the next Miyazaki constantly, due to his impact on anime and cinema in general. This title is something he has been quick to shake off, citing Miyazaki as both an inspiration and a genius, but saying, "You can't be Miyazaki, you can only be the second Miyazaki, and that isn't something to aim for." One thing they do share, however, is that strong emotion that their films represent. When you watch a Shinkai film, especially in the theatre, there's a very specific feeling that it portrays and that the audience feels. So today I want to talk a bit about Shinkai movies as a whole, this emotion they present, what makes the movie special, and why, despite their flaws, so many people feel a strong connection to them. In 1999, Shinkai released a short movie called She and Her Cat. It was only 5 minutes long and with no real plot to speak of, but of a cat, Chobi, reflecting on several heavy topics such as love, existence, and the limits of his own perspective. It is a beautifully animated short, done entirely in black and white, which helps create this lonely, somber atmosphere. It was clearly some of the first work of someone passionate about the craft, and even then bears resemblance in its presentation to his later works. This was the first animation he had written, and it still bears the same strong emotion that his films have today. Three years later was Voices of a Distant Star, another short but in colour and a little while longer in runtime as well. This time the theme of the movie was two long-distance lovers, and the relationship that they have across this large physical space that separates them. It's not overwhelmingly sad, but that's that feeling of longing and wishing for something that's unrealistic and out of reach. That's so heartbreaking. Shinkai's first feature film was The Place Promised in Our Early Days. Shinkai's first step into full-length films was one that allowed him to spend more time in his plot. This one was particularly sci-fi, building the foundations of the supernatural element of his movies that Voices of a Distant Star begun. I feel this was more of a drama-heavy story than his previous works, with themes of wonder, dreams, and ultimately loss. You can probably see where I'm going with this. Even his early films were emotional paintings, drawn with the intention of making us think or feel something. He didn't shy away from using deeper emotion, but would usually mix in elements of wonder through the music, plot, and animation. These emotions, sentimentality, dreams, wonder, they're all these positive emotions similar to the ones he practiced in his early work. He mixes these in with the longing, the pain, the loss, creating this dichotomy of emotions that feeds back into the person watching the movie. Perhaps Shinkai's biggest strength is this ability to build this sentimental yet slightly jaded mood in his films. His movies often don't seem to have that satisfying conclusion to wrap up every thread across the movie. They are emotionally raw pieces of cinema, as if they are his own messages about life itself. They are raw and imperfect, because that's how everything is. All of this can really be summarised into the first emotion that I'm going to talk about that Shinkai used in this work, which is one of time. He uses emotions that stir memories of the past to make the audience look back on their own life. It's very much an idea of looking backwards in time, reflection, and seeing how things have changed to get to where they are now. The idea of time as a canvas for Shinkai to paint upon, and the picture he makes is the most vivid, emotion-driven one I've seen. If you have seen a Shinkai movie before, one of the things that will stick in your head will be the quality of art. Breathtaking, handcrafted backdrops with gorgeous-looking panoramic shots and rain. A lot of rain. The art doesn't only look incredible, but it doesn't lack depth either. The extended, sweeping shots of Tokyo aren't superficial ways of filling the movie's runtime. They are moments carefully considered and placed to elicit a feeling of awe within the person watching the movie. We truly feel, see, and can nearly touch the world the characters live in, and the beauty sucks us into this world, a world full of awe that the visuals create, that brings back nostalgia for that time when we were younger, with a melancholic thirst for the world we used to live in, and thoughts of what could have been. His characters feel like real people, acting as they want to because of how they feel. They chase dreams, people even, looking for a satisfying conclusion to this chapter of their life. Shinkai uses teenage characters who wear their emotions on their sleeve and act in this way because he wants to teach us to experience these feelings again. He wants us to feel the same rush as we did when we were reaching for our goals when we were younger. Time isn't just used in an emotional sense. There are very strong narrative plot lines that revolve around the idea of time, the most notable certainly being Kimi no Na wa, in which the main characters were living in two different timelines. It feeds back into both the way of telling the story, in addition to heightening the effect of the feelings presented. I want to talk briefly about shot composition. It's something that I've kind of already touched on, but there is another aspect that adds to the sense of melancholy I've now talked about. The position of characters in the frame gives this sense of longing for someone that works hand in hand with that reflection, as well as the supernatural elements of the movies in some cases. For example, characters positioned off to one side looking towards the other. An analysis from user Nap282 on Reddit talks about how, in 5 cm per second, Takaki spends more time looking towards the right hand side of the frame as the movie goes on. They go on to mention how this shot is like a book, reading from right to left as the Japanese do. Looking towards the right is him looking into the future. I think this is pretty true across a few of the other movies as well though. With Your Name, the idea of time is especially relevant as I've touched upon, and this is shown effectively with shots of Mitsuha looking left more often, and Taki looking right more often, when they pass each other on the stairs at the end of the movie. Taki is on the left of the two, and Mitsuha on the right, but there is this great shot of them passing over that symbolises the two timelines converging, and the two of them meeting. Shinkai doesn't present time as a physical barrier that cannot be surpassed. Time is malleable, supernatural, and leads to all kinds of interesting developments in his stories, as well as these strong feelings that the audience can get behind. The second idea I will be exploring is of a similar vein and describes the continued theme of distance. It's notable in many of Shinkai's films, physical separation of characters, long journeys, or imagery of vast regions of space. Of course, this distance isn't truly only physical. Distances are often used in a metaphorical sense to show the inner struggles and turmoil of characters. In 5 cm per second, a large emotional distance is contrasted to the rather small physical distance between Kaede and Takaki. Despite how close they are, there is an insurmountable wall, an unbreakable barrier that separates the two. The idea isn't only used in a sad sense though. In Weathering with You, Hodaka is happy having created distance between himself and his home by going to Tokyo. Of course it comes with its problems, but when he's told to go back, that becomes the worst thing he could hear. Even in She and Her Cat, Shinkai ponders implicit differences between animals and humans, going on to show how this distance can lead to a difference in perspective of the world. In all Shinkai movies, there's a strong emphasis on love. In essence, the stories are teen romance stories, and love is an integral part of all of this. This love is obviously what creates most of the strong emotional moments, as it adds a certain weight to every part of the journey. Distance is used most commonly as an antagonistic force working to oppose this love, in one of the ways I've spoken about already. 5 centimeters per second dwells in a more downbeat, realistic view of the outcomes of long-distance relationships in all 3 of the chapters, and how this can have an effect on not only the people directly involved in these relationships, but also the people around them. Even the name, 5 centimeters per second, is about how this distance between ourselves and others is continuing to grow at a steady, yet constant rate, and how one day we'll have drifted a long way away from each other, as if we were never really close at all. The point of using physical distance as a theme throughout Shinkai's movies varies from film to film. It's a theme and idea we can all relate to, especially in the modern world. We live in a world where we have the ability to talk with people across the globe. So in that sense, we're as close to each other as we have ever been. But at the same time, with this connection to people we cannot actually see in person, or on a regular basis, we can begin to lust for more, for a closer connection with those we hold dear to us that live far away. It is this that Shinkai aims to do. We can empathise with this idea of having a large distance to someone we care about, and it's a feeling that can be overwhelming and upsetting. The final of the 3 themes I want to talk about is a little bit different. Of course, there is no overarching theme of love throughout the movies, but I don't think it is that makes Shinkai special. It's obviously an important part and communicated effectively, and well, there wouldn't be much to say. Actually, this 3rd theme is probably key to why Shinkai is related to Miyazaki so often. This of course is due to the underlying religious themes within the movies, and what they serve to do. Both Shinkai and Miyazaki incorporate a traditional Japanese religion known as Shintoism, which is commonly known as the Way of the Gods. Shinto gods are known as kami, and are spirits that look over various parts of nature and of everyday life. Things like wind, tree, agricultural spirits. Shinto is a religion void of absolutes. There is no path that leads to the ideal Shinto person. There is no absolute right or absolute wrong. Nobody is perfect. But it is the actions that you take to improve yourself, to help others, or to keep the balance in nature that define who you are. In Shinto itself exists the idea of time that we've spoken about. The religion has established strong links between modern day and ancient Japan, which hark back to the first theme of time. There are lots of clear religious ideas in Shinkai films, from shrine festivals to prophecies of weather girls. This aspect of the story tends to serve as a ribbon that ties everything together. In Kimi no Na wa, the musubi. Tying thread is musubi. Connecting people is musubi. The flow of time is musubi. The threads are the god's art and represent the flow of time itself. They converge and take shape. They twist, tangle, sometimes unravel, then connect again. And that, when a person consumes something and it joins their soul, that's musubi. This idea of musubi, tying everything in the story together and explaining in religious terms how Taki and Mitsuha were able to meet following Taki drinking the sake and taking her soul, which was walking the line of the living dead into himself. Of course, it's not just a plot device. When religion is shown in Shinkai's movies, it does tend to be pretty understated. There are no huge teachings that are shoved in your face, nor any grandiose religious plot lines. There is always a quiet space, an area for the characters to be alone for a moment, away from anyone else, with just their faith, feelings, and emotions. This area is unimpeded. In Kimi no Na wa, the shrine and surrounding area is integral following the comet landing. In Weathering With You, the shrine atop of the building is where Hodaka can escape to late in the film, and we never see anyone but him and Hina up there. It is this minimalized, quiet, personal take on faith and having something to hold on to that allows for this to be important in Shinkai's work. The downplayed religious themes contrast very strongly with the huge supernatural elements that mark the plot, creating this Shinto-like sense of balance, as well as highlighting the necessity for these smaller things in life to give purpose to everything. The music helps in this manner. Whilst there are a few songs that tend to be louder, more recognisable tracks, the majority is the sort of song that easily blends into the background of the movie. I not pretend to know anything at all about music theory or how these songs may have been written or come about, but I know of their effect on my viewing experience, and all I can say is that none of these subtle piano tunes feel out of place. They all serve to create something, an emotion much larger. As the movie goes on, the tracks become more dynamic and louder, with usually more singing, building up to a crescendo that coincides with the emotional high point towards the end of the movie. The reason for this is to make these emotions, sentimentality, loss, wonder, feel more important. Makoto Shinkai is a genius director that has made some of the most emotionally strong films I've ever watched. He incorporates ideas like space, time and faith in order to perpetrate these feelings of melancholy or an appreciation. Watching a Shinkai movie is a special experience that few films are able to replicate. Towards the end of Kimi no Na, there is the moment where Taki and Mitsuha are able to meet. They spend about a minute together before Mitsuha disappears, and the memory of her begins to fade from Taki's memory. For a moment, after she goes, everything just stops. No music, no animation, just a still image, Taki in front of a twilight sky, the bridge between light and dark. Just a moment ago, past and present had aligned, but now the past was disappearing out of nowhere. We are asked, as the audience, several questions by Shinkai. Why is there this feeling of loss for the world of your dream that has begun to fade away and become more vague? Why do we long for a connection to something we don't even know the name of and can't put into words? Why are we sad about something we can't quite remember?
私も君の名前は二人の間通り過ぎた風はどこから寂しさを運んできたの泣いたりしたその後の空はやけに透き通っていたりしたんだいつもは尖ってた父の言葉が今日は温かく感じました優しさも笑顔も夢の語り方も知らなくて全部君を真似たよもう少しだけでいいあと少しだけでいいもう少しだけでいいからもう少しだけでいいあと少しだけでいいもう少しだけくっついてい